Hey, so good to see you. This is Global News Morning. I'm your buddy Bill. Always a pleasure to have you join us, and always a pleasure to check in with our good friend Matt Lee. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing great. February, traditionally the coldest month of the year. Very
Yeah.
topical to talk about insulation here right now,
Yeah.
specifically for residential homes.
Yeah. We want to talk about, the residential homes. We want to talk about maybe going and looking for grants if you want to update some stuff. We want to talk about, what is um, we're going to talk about the regular, what we used for a very long time in regards to insulation. And we're going to work our way up to what kind of the new strategies are. They can be a little more expensive, but, we want to talk about, maybe we go and look for grants or maybe we go and look at like how efficient they are and go from there.
Well,
So
when you talk about efficiency, it's one of the reasons why we are going to talk about insulation. Is its primary purpose keep the heat in.
that's great. Yeah, that's right. So we want to talk about heat transfer. So what we want to do is we want to have a resistance to that. And basically, that's why the building code has gone up for blown in insulation in an attic, right? We know back in the day, a long time ago, you'd see insulation that was just enough to cover the 2x6. And then they realized how cold the ceiling was and how much it's like heat going out of the top of your head while you wear a toque, like it continues out that section. And as we've gone along, we've gone from our 38 to our 50, and now we're at our 60. And basically, it's a huge hump of blown in insulation in your attic to keep that resistance and keep that heat in the house.
Okay, we'll talk about types of insulation, and everyone knows about fiberglass.
Yeah, so pink bat insulation, the Pink Panther on the side of the bag, that's the key one that everybody had seen. It's a good insulation. It is a looser insulation, so the R value can range, and every bag, they do have different stages, but I mean, if you were looking at it and you see a bag that says R12, and then it says that it has to be 3.5 inches in depth to get that R12, that bag is going to be relatively around an R zero point 0.4 per inch. So when you look at 3.4 R per inch, then you're looking at that, and what that reason is because it's a little looser than other stuff. So when you're putting it in, you can feel that it's flexible and it kind of breathes. The issue with that is that it's going to allow a little air to kind of protrude and into it. So
Yeah, leave little tiny gaps. Cellulose fiber.
cellulose fibers, the R value is about the same, maybe a little bit higher. But the nice thing about that is that it's 85% recycled.
Hmm.
So I mean, you're using recycled materials, and it might be newspaper or whatever that they've put into the bins, and they've made this insulation. So like that's kind of the style that some people want to go with, and they want to be very green style. That and so you might want to just use maybe a thicker bat or use double up the bats to create a more of a barrier, but that it's relatively along the same.
So from cellulose fiber to foam board, is this a relatively new thing?
No, actually, so the foam board is like what is normally known as SM board, is used a fair bit on actually concrete pads. Like if you insulate, you don't want the floor to be cold, they'll actually put this SM board underneath, and then they'll pour over top of it. They will use it as an extra bit. Where if you're doing vinyl siding, sometimes they will strap the house with an SM board all the way around, and then put the siding on to create that house to be tighter, to create more of an R value, and do it as much as they can. And it's really good. You tape the edges, and it works really well. So Ruxol is basically, what I would classify as twice as dense as fiberglass insulation. It's a little more expensive, but it is. If you see on the side of a bag, it'll say R14, but it says 2 inches. You're getting an R7 ish per inch, so you're doubling that up, and it is very dense. It's easy to work with. It doesn't have fiberglass in it, so it's actually not itchy. So it's a lot easier to work with. So it's good.
And ICF insulation.
You're building a house like Lego. So these guys come in and they're putting styrofoam blocks all the way around, and you can either do the foundation or you can go right to the rafters. and what they do is they pour concrete in the blocks. So basically, you know what a cinder block looks like, and it's got holes in the middle. This is the same idea, and it's got plastic pieces in between. It's got SM board on each side, like that's what the block is built out of, and they've got these, fingers that are pointing up, and they actually fit together like Lego, and then they fill it full of concrete. So it is the highest efficiency you can get, and that's great. Like I think it can be a little more difficult to run wiring and doing different things. It takes a little longer, but it's a really good product.
Okay, let's talk about spray foam now.
Spray foam is excellent. It is more expensive, but I mean, you get what you pay for. I mean, to me, we just used it on a project, and you can literally heat this house that's about 1,200 square feet with what I call a milk house heater, but it's like a square box, and it's unbelievable. It fills in every gap. It is basically creating this bubble, and that resistance is amazing. You probably need an air exchanger so that you don't get the stale air inside, and that you do get a little bit of changing in there. But it is that's one of my top for sure.
Those were the recommended types of insulation. There are ones to avoid.
The main one is asbestos. We see back in the day that they used asbestos wrap for radiators. They used it for blown-in insulation in an attic. They used it for different things. The reason they used it is because it was a really good insulation. It was dense, and it really stopped. It had created that resistance. At the time, they didn't know the effects of it, right? So what we're doing is when we go into houses, and if we see asbestos wrap pipes, or if we see home inspector sees it in the attic and says, look, you've got vermiculite insulation, and it's the one that is more of that green style, we're going to have to get it tested. Then we use the companies that send it off to the lab in Ottawa, and they test it, and we go from there. So we want to make sure, and then basically you have to price it to see how much it's going to cost to take out, or what you're going to do with it. I think there's regulations where I think that you can remove it yourself. I don't think it's recommended. I would use a professional, and I would that's just the way you go, because you're dealing with something that is airborne, and you want the proper equipment, and I would use the professional for that.
Okay. We are approaching the coldest month of the year. Some great advice here from our good friend, Matt Lee. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Real estate tips brought to you by Matt Lee of Royal LePage.